news.
Gotta love everything happening in Miami. I mean, this place is on fire. It's lit. You know, from a lifestyle perspective, in the continental, or call it the main 48, you got the best beaches, best lifestyle, and you've got a lot of the best people here. And it's near Puerto Rico, so always happy to visit. And Mayor Suarez, you know, mad props to his courageous leaning into the future, because the future favors the bold. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about one of the things that's driving me, right? You know, we're talking about the future. The future is now, and the future is what we make it. As I like to say, the future is going to happen to you or with you, which is why it's so important to get involved. Be the change you want to see in the world. And so I want to talk about a few things that are happening, you know, right now that are impacting the world around us. You know, this is, you know, what is crypto doing? It's bringing transparency, for one. It's actually difficult to find credible data around the amount of dollars that have been printed the last couple of years. I hope that number isn't accurate. It'll be good for crypto, but not necessarily good for this country and humanity as a whole. You know, we're going to evolve, we're going to change. I hope it's more of an evolutionary event than a radical revolutionary event. You know, rather than a revolution, a rebirth. But these are scary data points. Another thing that we've seen is what's happened with mining. The US has become the largest crypto mining market in the world, not because of anything our government did, but here's what we had if you haven't seen these charts. China dominated Bitcoin mining. To a point, I was very concerned. One of the biggest risk factors I had always seen for Bitcoin is the concentration risk, the centralization of the infrastructure that powered the Bitcoin network being in China. Fortunately for, I think, all of us, and this isn't a criticism of them, but what's best as we think about a world of distributed or decentralized infrastructure is that they fumbled the ball. And again, America picked it up because of the private sector, because of commercialization, because of many of you here in the room, and thank you for that. I don't know if you saw the news this morning in Europe. The biggest news story in Europe right now is that they're talking about banning crypto mining throughout the entire European Union. That's today's news. This is what's happening right now. So what we saw in China, they're now talking about doing in Europe. This is something we should all be paying attention to. We don't want to have to keep moving our infrastructure, moving our businesses, moving ourselves and our lives, right? That's why I say the future is going to happen with you or to you. I prefer with. This is also an interesting data point that 87 countries are looking at creating their own cryptocurrency, which is really a fiat crypto. You know, it's the central banks issuing their currencies using this technology, which, by the way, is the right thing for all of them to do. You know, let's use the best, latest, and greatest technology. So, I mean, it makes sense. You know, China is the furthest along with the Chinese digital yuan. Over 95% of all stablecoins are issued in US dollars. Europe, or the euro, and the Chinese yuan both have less than 1% market share. At a time where governments care about this. You know, thank you to the circles and the tethers and everyone that helped build this critical infrastructure. The United States of America and the US dollar is dominating the settlement currency for this entire emerging industry that's growing rapidly. Again, not because of anything our government did, but because of the private sector, because those of us like those of us here in the room have done. And if it weren't for that, as of today, the Chinese digital yuan would become the dominant stable currency from which we trade, based upon everything happening. So right now, the US dollar is the leading currency of settlement for all of this. And it will likely stay that way because of the innovators here in our industry, as long as our government doesn't screw it up. Which is why I want to talk to you about this. I think some of you know I ran for president of the United States back in 2020 as a reconnaissance mission. Well, that one, I announced July 4th on election year. It's impossible to win. It was a very expensive reconnaissance mission. I spent over $6 million to go into the system as an independent candidate, announced on July 4th, auspicious day for that, to understand the way that the game is rigged. How else are you going to learn it? And so that was a very expensive lesson to figure it out, and I wouldn't have done that and taken on the risk. Clearly, there are much cheaper ways to create publicity for yourself and are much lower in risk. I think many of us have seen what they like to do to outsiders trying to mess around with our political system. It can cost you your reputation, your liberty, potentially even your life. You know, it's not something I want to do. I'm doing it because I've seen too much. I know too much. And I have the means. And I think I can do something that will make an impact. Kind of like a child in the street and a bus coming. You have a choice, but do you really? And so we got to do that. And so the legislative branch of government matters. And I think, as, well, Wired would say, Congress is clueless. And this is not meant to be a criticism of anyone. But if any of you have watched when our big tech leaders go in to testify, you know, and if any of you have watched that, did you see the quality of the questions being asked? They have aides. They've got people that can help them write those questions. I don't want to say pathetic, it's sad. It gives me deep concern for our collective future. Like, it matters. And take a look at what's going on right now. I don't know if you've been following this. I mean, what are the top topics these days? It's, you know, the pandemic, the border, and infrastructure. It's worth probably just talking a moment about this infrastructure bill and a couple of the other things. So, like, we've got stablecoin legislation, you know, that they're talking about. Obviously, considering the quality of the questions, they could end up making a decision that jeopardizes our entire future. They could pass some legislation. We talk about securities law. And are these things utilities, securities? What are they? Commodities? They could end up passing some legislation that could impact everything we do in this country. You know, we're talking about infrastructure and what reporting looks like, down to $600. This is not an infrastructure issue. You know, this data, I made this basically in the last 2 hours. I normally don't decide what I'm going to talk about until the moment of, and sorry to everybody in the back for, you know, bringing things in last minute. But this was one of those fact-checking, you know, things. So the GOP said that 7% of the infrastructure bill was related to infrastructure. CNN's fact-checkers came back and said it's actually 30%. You know, hard to know exactly what those things are, but this is one of the problems with how legislation is created in this country. They put headlines on it, and this is not a criticism of the left or the right. This is not a criticism of Biden or anybody else that I'm happy to use as, you know, examples of recent stuff. The problem is pervasive, and it's on both sides. You know, this isn't a Democratic or Republican issue. This is, and again, don't hate the player, hate the game. It's an incentives problem, as many of us know that work in this space, but this is a little concerning. if we create a container to have a conversation about infrastructure, the conversation should be about infrastructure. If we want to do something else and spend billions or trillions of dollars, we should create a container for that. What I'm going to explain right now is how and why it happens. You get if you're elected into Congress, you normally get a 1,000-page document, given to you an hour before you vote on it. A lot of time, to read that. Not even your aides can. And generally, our legislators are not reading the things that they've been elected to legislate or vote on. The reality of how it typically works is I don't really care what's written in it as long as you put these 5 pages in. It gets passed around. Everybody puts in the things that they want on behalf of the special interests that finance their ability to end up in political office. And you let that type of behavior run on long enough, you're going to get the situation we're in. Which is why it's so important that we have people in office that understand the issues, that have subject matter expertise, that have actually done some of these things. And I'm not pointing fingers at anyone. This is, really the fault is us. We have the ability to choose. And if you're not voting, you are potentially going to contribute to the problem of mining not happening here. Stable coins becoming Chinese digital yuan. All of our activity here being classified as a security. These are very real issues, and we have the ability to influence this outcome by putting the right people in office. So we only have 2 senators today that have invested in crypto, and we've got 5 members of the House. So the good news is we've gone from 0 to 7, right? We have advocates now that are, publicly advocating, but 7 ain't enough. There's 100 U.S. senators, so 2 out of 100, 2%. 2%. We have the ability to move these numbers, and this is an interesting article that just came out from Politico, talking about how Bitcoin may impact the midterm elections here in the United States. I've gone on Fox and many other news sources and talked about this as the infrastructure bill was going through. And what I explained to those that are involved is that we're a big community and we're growing. Tens of millions of Americans participating to some degree, many albeit small. Hundreds of millions of people in the world. $2 trillion or so of wealth that's been created and dispersed amongst us all over the world. We do our research. We don't forget. And a lot of us are single-issue voters. That issue maybe being Bitcoin, crypto, or the future and technology in general. Single-issue voters. This is why Democrats and Republicans alike may, it has nothing to do with what your political party is. And we have the potential to be a force in the midterm elections. Those that are not doing their homework, those that are not doing the job that they've been elected into office to do, to bother even to read or understand the issues at hand that may affect our future, the future generations, the future of civilization, not bothering to do it. You can agree to disagree. I'm okay with that. But if you haven't done your job, I got a problem with that. And hopefully some of those people get voted out of office. And hopefully those people that do the job, do their work, end up in office. And by the way, midterm elections are November 8th this year. This is just something that some of you may have missed. Blockchain-based voting did get implemented into the presidential elections or the elections last year in County Utah. And the first presidential vote was actually cast in that election. And of course, I was the one to get that vote. And for anyone that knows Brittany Kaiser, she was involved in all of that, and Carla Ballard. And what was really awesome about it is this system went live shortly before everybody else could vote. And so the first vote cast in Utah for any candidate was for me, meaning for a little while, I had more votes than everyone combined. I mean, massive lead with all of one vote. Right now, I don't know how close you're following this, but it's been publicly reported already. I did file in November for a U.S. Senate run in the state of Vermont. The reason why is I think we need one of our own, with a seat at that table in the room, having the important conversations regarding our collective future. And remember, what happens in the United States affects more than the United States. This matters. And so right now, I'm still in the exploratory phase. Again, you don't file unless you're really serious. I guess you also don't go run for president. But, I'm in an exploratory phase, getting all the ducks in a row, making sure that I have consensus from the people in Vermont that I'm talking to. And if we come to agreement that that is what they think is best for the state, then absolutely I will do it because I care. And so for anyone that wants to get involved with me or otherwise, and by the way, most importantly, this isn't about me. I hope that through my actions, I inspire others to get involved up and down the ticket across the nation and the world preferably, right? From city council to state assembly. We need people of, for, and by the people up and down our government that have taken the time to learn what matters, right? I hope that by these actions, because we only have the power to change ourselves, but by being our best selves, we have the ability to inspire others, by leading through example. That's the Discord chat. If you want to join, that's the first time that link has got up. And if you want to learn anything more, brock.vote. Thank you, Miami. Thank you, North American Bitcoin Conference.
Brock Pierce, potential U.S. Senator. Brock Pierce, potential.